The Peripheral is a new show on Amazon Prime based on William Gibson's 2014 science fiction mystery thriller of the same name. It stars Chloe Grace Moretz, Gary Carr, and Jack Rayner. It's executively produced by the minds behind Westworld and is created by the writer who wrote the first two episodes, Scott B. Smith, which we're reviewing, by the way. Welcome to today's episode. So we've mentioned H.P. Lovecraft in the past. We've talked about Philip K. Dick, Isaac Asimov, basically the grandfathers of science fiction. But William Gibson also has his place as a pioneer in science fiction. He is kind of credited as the guy behind cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk, like the games?
No, cyberpunk being the genre of cyberpunk. No, but the games, it's funny that you mentioned that because remember Mass Effect, there's that scene where you walk in and you take a drink from a bartender and you just you pass out immediately. Yeah. So in this episode, there's a scene where the main character, she is in the body of her brother Burton, and she walks into that fancy outlet and she immediately takes a drink.
Yep.
And when that happens, I'm like, is she gonna pass out?
That world actually reminded me a lot of The Late Shift, which is a mobile app game where you kind of get to pick your own adventure. Especially...
Do you want to go through comparisons? Because I have a lot of them.
Yeah, okay.
I assume you do too. Let's go one by one. So Ready Player One, the VR reality, avatars, the future mixed with the past.
Yes, I have also Gamer, just because of the fact that
I was thinking about sticking Gamer.
You literally put on the goggles and you're just like some other person. A lot of it is like action, those type of games.
Who starred in that again?
I think it was Gerard Butler.
Yeah, but who was like the kid who was like controlling him?
I actually never saw the movie.
Okay, I remember it was about a kid who would play as Gerard Butler, but then he found out that Gerard Butler had his own like consciousness, and so then they started talking
so then
to him.
so then it's very closely related to that.
I guess. And then Sword Art Online, which is that anime series, the Japanese one, where people get trapped in a VR headset game.
I don't have any like anime on there, but I did say Westworld, which you said is by
You just took my next one. Yeah, Westworld, obviously.
Free Guy, I also have, though not the same tone.
Yeah, you're going in order of the ones I'm listing, but creators are the same for Westworld. Also, the actors, I don't know if you recognize Mr. Pickett, I think is his name. He's
Corbell Pickett.
Corbell Pickett.
I didn't
he was the dad of Dolores in the first season. Yeah, he has a beard now. But also, a lot of people in this show have shown up in that other Amazon series, the Philip K. Dick show, the Electric Dreams show.
Oh, okay, yeah. I never saw it, but I also saw Foundation. That was my last comparison, mostly just because of the fact that they are trying to, like, expand this world.
Foundation is the loosest one to me. All the other ones that you said made sense. Stanley Parable, I would say, when they first jump in there and there's a narrator talking to him. Alita is the guide. She has banter, she has sarcasm, she gives him tasks.
Yes.
I was wondering what if he like started doing his own thing would end up happening.
Yeah. The more you say it, the more I'm like, no.
And then there was Looper, because we find out that this VR world is actually real and it has to do with the past or the future coming back to like fight the past, and that's where I think this is all going.
Yeah.
And then Brave New World, that show that came out on Peacock. I know it's based off the book, but that showed future technology. It had New London in it. It had a bunch of Greek lettering, and this definitely has an impact of Greek. Like, there are giant Greek sculptures, and it's future London. So, like, there are a lot of connections with other things, which is funny because Gibson, one of his first books that, like, really hit it off, he was afraid was going to be compared too much to Blade Runner when he first wrote it. So
I thought that this thing, and I could tell from the trailer, was going to be this way, but I mean, cinematic, like just overall. Especially
there was a budget, it's like $10 million an episode.
Absolutely, and like when they're in the game, that's when this show I think really comes to life.
Yeah, so we're talking a lot about just like the observational stuff that you can kind of jump into, but if you haven't seen the episode, obviously go watch it if you're interested before you listen to this. Episodes pilot, and episode 2 is called Empathy Bonus. Let's talk about the intro, the title sequence. I found it run-of-the-mill. It's city-spheric. There's a lot of little special effects going on. But, like, to me, it just felt very generic to what we're used to seeing nowadays.
Really? So you weren't... Because it reminded me of, like, the Expanse intro.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was just supposed to be, I think, like, really high-tech and stuff.
Well, maybe it'll change your opinion if I tell you this. So creative director Patrick Clare, he was the one who produced it. He's part of the production studio that makes them. He's also done the intros to *Halt and Catch Fire*, *The Man in the High Castle*, *Daredevil*, *Westworld*, *True Detective*.
Yeah, I mean, that makes so much more sense now.
Those are way better. right?
Yeah, no, that is true. But I mean, like,
I mean, he also did Lovecraft Country and Archive 81, Wolf Like Me, Jupiter's Legacy, His Dark
all
Materials.
those, yeah, from your thing, it just
but they're
sounds
all
like,
very similar. And so I've always thought, well, why do they always like sort of copy each other with these? And it's like they're not. It's just the same dude.
Same guy.
It's the same dude that they go to, and they're mostly really good. But this one just felt like very on par, if not. There was nothing very substantive to me.
Okay,
about
I
it.
can see
and I
that.
mean, like, this is the littlest thing to criticize of a TV show, but that's how they started it. We didn't get any intro scene, right?
Right, yeah.
The Alita thing happened afterwards.
That happened afterwards, yeah. The intro is the first thing we see.
Yeah,
But then,
I'm gonna just jump into the synopsis first before we jump in, because it's a complex show.
Okay, all right.
Flynn Fisher, Chloe Grace Moretz, lives in rural America where jobs are scarce. She works at a local 3D print shop, but made more as a combat scout in an online game that she recently let go of.
Yep.
Wilf Netherton, Gary Carr, lives in apocalyptic London 70 years later. When their worlds collide in an online game Flynn is testing, both of their lives will forever change.
Yep.
Now that's straight from Amazon.
Yes.
And I find that it's a little different. Like, the way that she jumps into the game is not that her brother's the one who makes money with the games, not her. But he kind of like let her take over.
But she's the better gamer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
And
Okay. So the first thing we see, is London 2099.
Wolf is, sitting on a park bench.
Yeah, there's this cafe that's been there forever. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a real cafe.
Yeah. Oh, really?
But what I was mostly happy about is that they gave us the year, because with movies and television shows, they love to throw out like coordinates and locations and times. And normally it doesn't matter. Like, normally it's stuff you can just gauge by yourself. But like, I would have no idea when this was. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we see Wilf, our main character. He's talking to Alita as like in a robot body or like a kid body.
A kid body, yeah.
And later on, he's going to be looking for her.
Right.
That's kind of the basis of the next two episodes. But this first scene doesn't really provide us with too much about them. It felt like it was put in post, like everything else about the Chloe Grace Moretz storyline made sense. Yeah. Flynn's storyline went in order and it was easy to track. With the Wilf one, it felt like they were just kind of intersplicing stuff.
No, I will agree with that. I did get from the first scene, though, that, like, it was already going to be a mind-bendy show. Like, that's what I feel
I got that from the trailer.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I think that just when you were actually watching the episode, that was kind of, like, the first hint of it. But I agree with it, because, like, what they were talking about, Alita's randomly talking about how she used to give him shoes and then, like, says goodbye, felt a little bit thrown in there.
I would mostly compare it to His Dark Materials, where we kept on seeing the Earth every once in a while, but most of the storyline followed Daphne Keene's venture. But like this Earth thing in the future, we haven't seen too much of it outside of the of Flynn's perspective of it, and I was fine with that. If we were just learning about it through her eyes, I think I would enjoy the show just as much.
I agree with you, yeah. But then we get a flash of Blue Ridge Mountain, Georgia. It's 2032. I know that Chloe Grace Moretz is actually from Georgia, but that's where we see Flynn. She's a country girl who has a blind, homebound, sick mom, and as we said before, she has a brother. She's
only blind because she has that glioma in her head.
Yes.
That's a tumor. So, like, it's blocking out, I guess, her occipital lobe or doing something that's causing her to be also in pain. A lot of pain. And in 2032, that's only 10 years from now. So immediately you're going to be very judgy.
Right.
You know? Like, whether or not this is actual credible stuff that could be floating Roombas. Why? Why do we need floating Roombas?
That seems like something that definitely is going to happen in the future, though.
It would be maybe in the far future, but right now it just feels like unnecessary because of the amount of power it would take to actually like fuel something to be able to hover over and then also clean at the same time. I don't know. That one seemed like it was just cool to see, but not as like utility wise a great idea.
I felt like
3D printer stuff, the bank that she works at, that seems completely believable. Because right now you can go to like a library. Some libraries have them. Some UPS stores have them where you can actually order 3D printed stuff. So the idea that there would be like a huge shop that does that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
Right. And then we're introduced to her brother, Burden. He's in the trailer. He's playing a game. And then what ends up happening is she decides to log in. And that's where we are introduced to the fact that she is able to basically complete the game. It's just
no. She doesn't just jump right in. Like Burton is saying, hey, this is the only way we can get money, right?
Yeah. For the pills for their mom.
Yeah, so ACA must have been repealed or something because like drugs are super expensive. There's no caps. And she's like, Tamazine, I don't know what that is, but like it's worth $1,000 a pill.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump in here, win the game because he's about to get paid by some rando who wants him to beat a level for him with his squad. And so that's what she does. And then she leaves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's less pay to play and more play to get paid.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where I saw the gamer comparison really the most. I felt like in this episode.
Now it's funny because in the book it starts off with Burton being a security guard working in the future already as a drone. So it doesn't really introduce us in the same way. It's kind of spoon feeding us in this series more so than the book. Now I haven't read too much more than a couple chapters of the book, so I can't really compare too much after that. But it's different in that respect. Also, the events that we respond to in the first episode are very different than what goes on in the story.
Yeah.
So they have taken some liberties, and apparently they were influenced. The Scott B. Smith guy was influenced when he was adapting it by Lost David or Daniel Lindelof. What was his name? It's one of them.
I think it's David Lindelof, yeah. But then this is when the show actually starts to be like get to its main point, because I was a little worried at first because we're getting London 2099, then we're getting a lot of information thrown at us, like a lot of exposition information. But finally what ends up happening is Burton, he gets kind of paid for a beta test that they're going to be playing.
Yeah. We should also mention that Burton's backstory is that he was like part of the military. He's got a lot of bros, and he also has these haptics installed in his body, which I guess help him fight and also be able to like control technology. However, they're very painful. So he's on the same pain medication, that Tamazine stuff that the mom is for her glioma. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and so then that's when, so after Flynn comes back from work, she goes to the trailer, Burton is there, and he's like, look, I have this new beta test that I want you to try out, because again, we're going to be paid for it. She has to kind of be coerced into doing it, and right as she puts the headset on, it is unlike anything that she's ever played.
It's a different type of headset, too. It's not the same VR, just stick over your eyeballs so that you're able to see.
Yeah, this is definitely...
Like, that's what the 2032 VR headsets looked a lot like the 2022 VR, which I think that's credible, but this is like technology that's been brought from the future, so it just kind of attaches to your skull, and then it like sends you into a different dimension.
Even after she stops playing the game for the first time, she has to take a second before she gets up because of how much brain activity is going on. But she ends up entering the game, and she looks like Burton. And so whenever I'm like talking about when she's in the game, I'm gonna use the name Flynn, but just be under she looks like Burton.
And I know it takes us a while before they reveal that she's in 2099, but let's just say that she's in 2099 now.
Yeah.
Because that's the ultimate twist, but that doesn't end up mattering too much because like she's just real.
Right.
She doesn't understand that she's real at first, because obviously you wouldn't think that when you enter a character's body that you'd be a real thing.
But this is something where it's like she was able to see through the eyes of the beholder, the eyes of the avatar. You know, it wasn't like a third person type of situation.
So she appears as this guy. She's got this voice in her ear. That's Alita. Alita's telling her all these tasks that she has to perform in order to help and save the world that they're in.
And like I said, I really like the world. I really like the motorcycle scene where you're able to see like all the different lights in London and all the different like statues and roads.
Well, see, that's the thing. The statues are the sizes of mountains now, and they're all Greek statues, which I don't know why in 70 years we would have done that. I was trying to understand why. And then, you drive up with the motorcycle, and then he pops out. He jumps into this really fancy party.
Buckingham Palace.
At Buckingham Palace, somehow without an invitation. Like, Alita's gotten all that planned.
Do it. Yeah.
And then he goes up to this lady, flirts with her.
Marielle needs to take her home because that's what the voice is telling him to do.
Seduces her, brings her back. Instead of using a motorcycle this time, they jump in the back of, a Toyota or something?
It was a very fancy car. But the thing that's worth notable about that is the fact that the driver is not an actual driver. It looks like a mannequin to me.
It looks like a Westworld character.
Yeah, basically.
And it's trained a bodyguard.
Has like no face. Yeah, it's trained to protect Marielle. And
doesn't do a very good job.
Yeah, because what happens is Flynn has to basically knock her out with this pill. The second that Marielle is knocked out, the mannequin like goes crazy and like throws
they have
Flynn
a fight
into
scene.
the front
It was
seat.
probably the most action-packed besides the fight scene at the beginning of the second episode.
Yes, and I want to say that whenever the show did go into its action scenes, I thought that they were shot very well. I really liked seeing the action.
It's hard to shoot an action scene in the front seat of a vehicle.
Yes, but it always kept me invested whenever an action scene actually did pop up because I was always like really entertained by it.
Yeah, but she, as Burton, is successful. Flynn is successful, and then she drives back to where Alita tells her to, and that's where we actually meet Alita. Alita, do you know who she's played by?
No.
Charlotte Riley, who is actually Tom Hardy's wife.
Really?
You would have seen her play Mae Fitzcarralton in Peaky Blinders.
Mae Fitzcarralton. You know what? I think I do know who she played.
Did she play Tom Hardy's wife in that?
No.
Okay, because that's what I was wondering if she would have done. Okay, moving on though. There's this great line where she's like, "You were easier to follow when you were just a voice in my head." Yep. That was probably my favorite line of the entire episode because it made so much sense. And then that was the
end of the sequence basically, because then we go back.
She leaves. Yeah.
Flynn, she goes back into 2032 again, and then she now has decided that since she has some money, she's going to go to a bar and she's going to pick up the pills for her mom.
Yeah, so that's where the pills are. That's where the gang members are, and for some reason they don't want to sell her.
Atticus, Buddy, and Connor.
You wrote down all the names. Yeah, and so they're not going to sell her this pill, and they're giving her a tough time. But that's when one of Burton's pals, this guy named Connor, who was in the bar, who we saw get called off, like he was drinking too much, I guess, and he kind of like helps her.
You want to talk about the most futuristic
he has one
vehicle. He has one arm, but he has like a vehicle, and it was definitely, that was the part.
Do you know what he reminded me of? He reminded me of the Motor commercials.
No, yeah. But like this is completely different though.
No, it's not. It's like he's half motorcycle. He just attaches himself right into the thing, and he has his gun, and he's able to intimidate them.
That's definitely the most futuristic that I felt like the show got when it did the 2032 storyline, because of just like how much like he was like connected to that vehicle and how much he was able to do.
Sure.
Yeah, so,
but he like rides up there and then he intimidates these guys, and then they give her the pill, and then they go back inside the restaurant, and Mr. Pickett beats them up. Or beats up his kid.
Or Bo Pickett, yeah.
Because he sold her one drug.
It was weird. I think he's evil, but I like that scene, and I like the character. I think he's going to be a good villain when the show...
Well, he's definitely the villain, because in the second episode, he's hired to kill the main family members. But leaving the bar, I guess, that's where Connor kind of takes Flynn back to her place, and then Flynn gives the pill to her mom, I expect. And then what happens next? I don't remember.
Yeah, well, that's when Flynn...
Does she go back in the game at this point?
She goes back into the game,
yes. And then this is where Alita and her hang out, and they go to this one place that Alita's like...
Well, not hang out.
That's right.
Yeah, Burton is like... He's tied to a table. He's about to get surgery where his eye is going to be taken out. Yeah, this was when I was like, okay, Alita definitely has an evil side to her. We kind of got hinted at the beginning, but here I was like, this is so obvious.
And they remove her eye. Like, it's not as bad as the Utopia scene. If you've ever seen the second episode of Utopia, that is dark eye removal.
And not anywhere close to like the Hostel film eye removal scene.
So it's not
This was literally just them taking the eye out.
But you did see the full eye come out of the body and then replace it with the other one, and that's where they knock her out. She comes to, and Alita takes her to this random facility where they use the eyeball that is now in Burton/Flynn's head, and they go down this elevator.
I was wondering what they were trying to do. I understand that Alita was trying to get it so that Burton could kind of like manage his like his
from what I understand is there's this giant huge company, right?
Yes.
And Alita is trying to break that company. So by hiring Burton from the past to come in and like be her bodyguard, but also like take in this information, she's able to descend all the way down to like level -100 or something.
Yeah.
And then they go to this like hidden chamber, and he like sticks his eye back into this other like computer, and he starts to download information. I
was very confused at that whole sequence, because I was like not really understanding what was going on.
Like this is where the lost stuff comes out, because it's like a lot of questions, not that many answers, but then they're interrupted by this bodyguard.
Daniel decides to have a fight scene with Burton, and I just wrote down my notes. Good fight. I like the fight scene. But yeah, no. Apparently, like kind of the twist in that scene is the fact that Burton ends up dying. Yeah. Like he literally gets shot.
Well, he has the security guy has a pulse gun.
Yes.
Something you'd seen like Star Wars, and he like puts it right up to the guy's face, and then he like fries his brain.
Yes, and then Flynn like comes out and like
I thought Flynn was like, I thought the whole idea was that if you die in the game, you die in real life. So I'm glad that didn't happen.
Like Sword Art Online or whatever.
Sword Art Online, yeah.
But she comes out in like a fit of rage. She's like really angry. She's like never again telling Burton she does not want to play the game because of like kind of how realistic and brutal it was.
Yeah, and that's where Wilf starts haunting her. He calls her up, and then he starts like telling her through her print machines that she has to go back in the game, or else he can't protect
Something
her.
that I realized in the first episode is the fact that it was like, it would be, the pacing to me just felt kind of off, because it was like some parts were really fast and I liked it when it was happening, and then some parts were taking their time. We even get kind of like a side storyline where Billy Ann, I think that's the name of Flynn's friend at the print shop or whatever.
The romance stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to just skip over that. The thing I'm realizing now as we're going over it all, though, is that a lot happened in that pilot.
Yeah.
So then we're
one
introduced
of my favorite things in the pilot, and also the second episode is the fact of how many characters there are. You have Tommy, the cop, kind of the romance line you were talking about. I was talking about Billy Ann, though, the person from the shop.
I know who Billy Ann is.
Her friend.
Yeah, but she was talking to her about romance. Like, she's literally just the best friend that's talking to her about wanting to flirt with this one cop. Yeah, that's it.
But then, you also have Wolf, you have Lev, like a ton of different people, and I felt like the characters were, like, that's why I think the potential for this show is there for it to be great. I can feel that this show is, like, definitely a lot of setup was happening in the first 2 episodes, but I feel like once you get to the end of this season, it's going to be really good.
I mean, I have a different opinion about it, but not from the first episode. The first episode I'm still very engaged with. By the end, though, they find out that there's a hit on them.
Yes, $9 million bounty.
Flynn doesn't want to go back in the game. Wilf is hounding her about it. But then there's also this bounty that has been put on the darknet that was from the future, I guess. Kind of like a John Wick bounty. And all these villains are coming after them. So Flynn goes home and she tells Burton, we've got a bounty on our heads. He doesn't believe her. And then she's like, well, maybe I'm being a little ridiculous. And then he and his military bros look at their iPad and they send out their own drones. And they find the military bros that are coming out to kill them.
A ton of guards coming at them. Yeah. That's where it leads.
So these mercenaries, and then they hack it. But, that's where the episode cuts off.
Right. When the second episode starts, though, that's when I was like, is this second episode going to be, way better than the first? Because we get, a 10-minute fight scene where it's just, it's basically Burton, his bros, and also Flynn just taking out all of the members.
Flynn basically hides inside, and she takes one out.
We did not get, a really...
There's some no-scope shooting, though, going on.
We did not get, a single character death, except for maybe Burton in the first episode. At the beginning of this episode...
Fake Burton. Future robot Burton.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of this episode, 14 bodies are already taken out. And
we should be clear, the main reason that she doesn't want to go back is not because she realizes she's from the future when she goes there, but because she doesn't like feeling pain.
Right. But she basically learns that she's from the future right after all.
She's not from the future, but that she was going to the future.
Right.
So when they do eventually take out all these bad guys, and they do so because Connor shows up, again, with his one arm and his motorcycle, and he takes out the last two, then the other storyline that's going on is that they showed up in invisible cars, right?
Yeah, and that was Atlanta to me. I was like, they are taking this straight out of Atlanta, that nightclub episode where
the only ways we get invisible cars 10 years from the future is if they're brought in technology from 2099 or whatever. So that's what they said they did later on. And
but still, it was so funny to me, especially when in the first episode you do see the ranger, whoever, get run over just out of nowhere by this invisible car.
Yeah, I know. I saw it coming because the guy told him to get in the street. And he was like, get in the street or else I'm going to shoot you. And I'm like, well, you're dead either way.
Yeah, but Tommy in the second episode, I felt like his storyline was kind of comic relief because he just sees a random coffee cup floating out of nowhere. And then he kind of knocks the coffee cup up and sees that, there's an invisible car there.
Yeah, I have all these plot questions that I'm going to get to at the end, but that just reminds me of one of them. She decides, okay, I'm going to finally go back in the game, and then that's where they give her mom the cure to her glioma.
Yes.
By proving that they're from the future, they have to do this, and then so she goes back and she does that, and then her mom gets a little sick and she goes back into the game. This is just a lot of back and forth, a lot of talking to Burton about why she believes that they're actually from the future, and the future people, Wilf, telling her, because Wilf has a boss too, and they're all trying to convince her that she needs to help them from the past and also in the future to find Alita.
The story, though, reminded me a lot of how this kind of came to be, because I said part of the present made contact with the past, causing what happened to basically, but it reminded me of Counterpart.
It reminded me of Counterpart, but it more reminded me of Loki with the variants.
Really? I thought that it was almost Counterpart completely, because you were talking about two different worlds that suddenly out of nowhere had a definitive moment where both of them changed.
I don't think it was two different worlds. It was one world, but then one thing happened. As soon as they sent something back in time,
what I meant
that's
by
where
world
it
was
caused
timeline.
Was a second variant.
Yes.
Yeah, that happened. But that was very much a variant. So it is like Loki, and they call them stubs. And so they don't care how much weird stuff they're throwing in the past. That's the reason why, because they've already screwed it up. They know that they're not the original timeline, so it doesn't matter to them. But episode 2 was really about just covering up the bodies that they had killed, showing the new villains, Mr. Pickett, that's going to be going after Flynn's character.
He doesn't want to. He has a meeting with Daniel.
He thinks it's the IRS.
Daniel says, I am going to give you $10 million to take out Burton and Flynn. And then he goes, no, are you crazy? I'm absolutely not going to do that. Later on.
Not because of a moralistic thing, because he thought he was being entrapped.
Right, exactly. And then
because they approached him in a video game. Like just a regular VR video game. They hacked into it. So the 2099 people have complete control over technology from the past.
And
which
that's
is
why
weird.
that's why he gets a quarter quarter of $10 million at the end of the episode. He checks his phone. He sees that, $2,500,000 has been kind of wired to him. And he, like, has this, like, look of, like, oh, no, but, like, here we go.
Yeah. You know? And so that's anything else that we need to really discuss?
Then at the very end of the episode, because of the treatment that the mom got, the mom can now see.
That's true. And also the body that they've replaced, because Burton's body died in the future in the first episode. Now it is actually Flynn's body that's walking around. And it just has it. When she's not in it, there's like an AI that just kind of like blinks and stuff. Kind of like a Westworld character. Yeah. But now I'll get to my plot questions. And they're more sort of like plot holes to me. And maybe you can answer them so that will actually like shore up some of my problems.
We'll see.
But why did they code the peripherals? So the peripherals are the actual units, the hosts, the thing that looked like Flynn, the thing that looked like Burton in the future, right? Why did they program them to have pain? Like that was the one thing that Flynn hated so much about it. And it's like, if you have the ability, you clearly programmed it on purpose to do this. Why do you need them to have pain?
Maybe because of the system that they're using to go into the game deals with the brain and brain activity. I feel like maybe pain is like a symptom that just has to happen. It's not one of those things that they can program. So you're telling me
they're experts at technology. They've created this thing where they can traverse time with brain waves, but they can't like weasel out just a little bit.
Yeah, because I think that like the pain is like involuntary. They can't.
You could just not add it to the avatar. The avatar doesn't have to. The peripheral doesn't have to have that section in your brain that feels pain.
Yes, but there's so much.
We already know where pain comes from.
There's so much of the character that again you can see through the eyes of the beholder, the avatar. So it's like you can probably feel pain as well.
And then if 29 is real, this was back when I was really questioning it in the first episode, and we're not sure. How did Marielle stall time? Because there was a lot of really weird video game effects that were going on, and I understand if like maybe they were able to change the avatar's perception to make it seem like she stalled time when she really didn't. But we saw Marielle like stall time. We also saw that the motorcycles evaporated when they were parked.
Yes, that was strange.
What was like? Why would they do that?
I don't know.
If it is real, why would you ruin a perfectly good motorcycle?
I was actually giving the show like kind of an out when it came to that, because I was like, the fact that this is a video game.
It's a plot question. It's not a plot hole necessarily.
Yeah, and I was because like when they got into the game, there was also some cheesy dialogue between Marielle and Flynn. So
they wanted you to think, that you're in a fake
So
thing.
I was like, okay, because it's a video game, this makes sense. But then when we learned it was actually later on in the future, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That
also,
doesn't make sense.
Back in the real world, so like 2032,
yeah,
what I consider the real world, Connor, it gets cut off before he even asks for another drink. Like, he's just sitting there with his beverage, and they're like, you're cut off. And it's like, wait, what? It was so weird. Also, in the second episode, which we didn't even really talk about this part, empathy bonus, the whole idea that they want Connor back on the team with the rest of the military bros, even though he only has one arm, is part of the idea that if you're nice, good karma will come back and help you.
Yep.
But like in this thing, it doesn't seem like the alcohol affects him at all, because he like is able to throw the canister all the way into the bin, like from 50 feet out. And like, I just don't see him as a liability even when he is drinking. So I don't know why they're making such a big deal.
That is true. Yeah, he seemed like pretty competent the whole entire time.
Okay. And then why did Mr. Pickett care how his son sold the $1,000 pill?
That was strange to me. I obviously they were doing it to introduce the fact that he was an evil character. But like his actual reasoning for beating up his kid didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was like you got the money in the end. And then it would have been one thing if they had just taken all the pills or something.
Right.
Like, because, And then why would a car with the ability to turn invisible need gas? Or how, more importantly, would that energy even work? Because it's like gas is going to only provide you with miles to go, but like the amount of energy that would be needed to turn a car invisible on command.
No, I definitely
I think it would need to be electric.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, no, it would have to be
Yet they stop at a gas station, and that's how the cop sees them. And then here's where it becomes a plot hole, I think. If they can, the 2099 storyline, alter or change the tech from the past and make it do whatever, why are they bothering to use the darknet to post hits on people when they can just take over like a drone, like a US drone, fly it over the little patch of land that they live in and drop a bomb? It would take 2 seconds to eliminate this threat. And and it's weird to think that in 70 years that we're able to do all this, especially since it's kind of hinted that there's been a pandemic or something that's taken out a huge portion of the populace. It's just like there's some strange stuff that just doesn't add up as much. And then how does Flynn become the best candidate? Like, there are so many gamers out there, and I get for the sake of the book, we're just supposed to strain our credibility and think, okay, well, maybe she is the best. But we don't even see her really doing anything that would make her seem like a legit, like amazing player.
Yeah, the only thing you really see is the beginning when she like is able to get the $1,000 for helping her.
And because you are in the and because you are actually in your body, wouldn't it be better to actually just hire a ninja?
Yeah.
Like someone who's legit, like a person who can fight and not necessarily a gamer for the future.
Probably,
I don't know. And then there's like a kind of a continuity thing. Wilf asks Flynn to link back into the game before we see his boss tell him that they had built her a new peripheral. So where would she have even jumped into?
That's interesting. Yeah, like where would she have gone?
Because it was before the attack on the family when he's first like, you got to get back in there. It's like, well, there's a dead body there. Yeah. I don't think like, where are you going to go?
No.
So it felt like that scene needed to it had to come on later. Then Wilf, when she does jump back into the future, he shows her a newspaper to prove the past. But it's a newspaper that he's showing her from 2032.
Yeah.
So it's not digitalized. It's not an archived article on an iPad or whatever device. This is from a small town in America, dated for a specific day, back in 2032. It looks brand new, fresh off the presses. How does he have it?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, maybe he would have 3D printed it, but why? Like, just for the extra, like, he planned out that moment so much where he was like, I'm going to convince her so much with this.
No, you're right. He could have just shown her, like you were saying, like an iPad or some type of thing to be like, this is actually how it is. It probably would have also, like, been able to kind of set up the world more to see more technology.
It's just weird to think that, like, I could not, if we have a newspaper from 70 years ago, it is not going to be in pristine condition.
Yeah, and this thing was clean.
Yeah, this thing looked like it could have just been unfolded that morning. Then they mentioned the Stubbs thing, which is the premise of the whole Loki thing where they're trying to stop variants. They don't seem concerned at all with variants, which makes me question, like, what is the ultimate purpose of these worlds if they don't care about what happens to either one of them? They even say later on, they're like, do you even think of us as real? And then she's like, well, do you think of me? Or vice versa.
Yeah, vice versa, yeah.
Yeah, and then did I miss the part in the second episode where they gave Flynn the lottery numbers? Because she goes back and then suddenly they win. They're like, there's like a time jump that happens.
Her cousin wins the lottery
because numbers. Of the lottery numbers that they gave her, but we never see that scene happen. We're just expected to know because which is strange. And then the last thing that I'll say is that it's convenient that Mr. Pickett happened to be VRing because imagine if he wasn't. Imagine if he was like a big RimWorld fan or Minecraft fan,
just logging onto Steam.
Yeah, no, he's logging onto Steam and he's just clicking away at his keyboard, and like one of the characters just starts talking to him like, I have put $2 million into your...
You would just think it was part of the game.
He would just be like, log off. Yeah. So yeah, those are all sort of plot issues for me, and that kind of brought the show down in my perspective. What would you give it?
Well, okay, so I give it a 7 out of 10. I think that the action scenes are well done. It did keep me invested in the story. The acting is good. It looks
great. Who's your favorite character?
I would probably say Flynn.
Okay,
or maybe
so
even Burton. Yeah, I think that I thought that, yeah.
Did you recognize Burton?
Really good. No, I didn't.
Jack Rayner. He was the brother in Sing Street, and he was also the boyfriend in Midsommar.
Look, it's been a while since I have seen Sing Street. The Midsommar thing is interesting. It's been a while since I've seen Sing Street, but I think he looks completely different. I would never guess. That. Yeah, and also it has a plethora of characters, so I feel like, if they need to kill one off to keep the story interesting, or the fact that just like they give all of them like some backstory, you understand all of them completely, I think that really works. And like I said, I think when you get to the end of the season, it's going to be really good. It has the potential to be great, but here's one thing. The runtime for both episodes, way too long. Way too long.
How would you plot in so much plot and not even fill in the stuff that I was asking about and still keep it? Like, it's only supposed to be 8 episodes or something.
Yeah, but I mean, like, an hour 12 and an hour 5, and who knows how long. Yeah, I know. And so, and then often slow scenes and kind of the uneven pacing I was saying before, all that does bring it down, so I can really only give the show, for the first 2 episodes at least, a 7 out of 10, but it definitely passes.
Okay, for me, it felt like the source material that they were using was never intended to become a movie, and that was before I realized it was 2014, so it obviously was supposed to. But it does feel like an Ender's Game scenario where I wouldn't have been surprised if they had been like, well, this can never be translated over into an actual show or movie.
Yeah.
Also, just as far as like spare thoughts go, like, it feels like Chloe Grace Moretz taking this role is kind of like Britt Robertson back in the day, like 10 years ago. She was doing like Under the Dome, The Secret Circle, Tomorrowland, and they kept on trying to cast her as the main character, the blonde, and like everything. She feels like she's just that now. A little bit.
Yeah.
But there's reason to be hopeful. Like, the director here was the guy who directed Cube, Splice, Westworld. Like, The Guardian called this show brilliant at 4 stars. And then it has an 8.3 on IMDb.
That's pretty high.
To me, though, I think I have to give the show a 5.
Wow, it doesn't pass for you?
No, the thing is, I found that second episode really, really exhausting. Like, it was just a lot of sitting around and talking to me, a lot of complaining. And then that, along with the fact that it has so many plot inconsistencies that I just don't have answers for.
I'll say that the last half of the second episode just kind of felt like the first episode where the pacing got slow. But I thought that the first, like, 20, 30 minutes of the second episode, where you have not only the action scene, but you get explained the peripheral, you get explained the plot where they're explaining how, like, there was those two different timelines, like we already talked about. And, like, it was actually kind of answering some questions. I thought that really worked.
I think The Verge's headline is the one I agree with the most, because it says Amazon's The Peripheral turns a piercing William Gibson novel into generic sci-fi. And that's kind of where, like, there were so many big ads for this. There was so much expectation. I watched the show, and I personally like the Lord of the Rings prequel better. That has like a 6.9 on IMDb, also produced by Amazon. But to me, that one feels like it had a lot more like going into it creatively than this does, where it just feels like a lot of regurgitation.
A lot of people would take that as an insult to the show.
Well, this has only had about 1,000 or so reviews, and that one has like 250,000 or something. So like, I don't think that a lot of people are going to be watching it in comparison. But Roger Ebert also agreed with me. It said it was a slog. For the most part, I think you've got the more in tune opinion. It was just that the first episode was interesting. It wasn't amazing to me, and the second episode just wasn't either.
Yeah, no, I didn't think the episodes were amazing, but I can see the setup that I think they're using.
But I just don't see, like, when they said that they're comparing the way that they approached it to Lost, that's scary to me, because it's like all these questions probably won't get answers. They're probably going to be very vague.
I remember they said the same thing about From.
Maybe, but like with From, I don't know. I like From better than this too. But I will say that I think that the acting was good. I saw the acting getting trashed a little bit. Chloe Grace Moretz, I think she does a fine job in this. It was the first role that I've seen her in where I wasn't like, oh, that's just a kick-ass girl again. Maybe it's just because she's aged into like this new, because she's a full adult.
I know she's taken like selective rolling now. I think it was like a specific year that she decided.
She's also very into games. Apparently that was a big thing on Twitter, is that she like really likes Modern Warfare and Call of Duty and stuff. I mean, it's like cool ideas mixed with weak ones. That's how I see it.
I can understand that.
All right. Also, it feels like Wilf's character is supposed to be way more important than so far that we've gotten for him. Like, I think we were going to need a serious backstory, or else it's going to feel like he's just kind of a tag along.
No, I agree. Like, Wilf seems like he's kind of supposed to be like the second starring role, and I haven't
actually. I think it's supposed to be a co-starring, but it's like right now he's almost like the Aaron Paul's character in Westworld, where he's been brought along, but it doesn't feel like he's essential.
Actually, part of the plot yet. No, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Unless you have anything else to add.
No, that's about it.
We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.